Mr. Gaddy and ask him to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to thank Dave Roberts for being a moderator, Karen McKeon for her efforts with the organization, and Joyce Bill, who I had the grand opportunity of meeting with because I just missed it. My background has been, first of all, after listening to Dave's message, if you guys aren't mad as hell at what's happening in Washington with Obama and with what he's doing, then it's the only way we can get everybody to get out and get the vote out. Right? It's a matter of voting for somebody. Even if you think you don't know which one, vote for one of us. But doggone it, we've got to get the people to get out and vote. To me, it's the scariest thing. I was thinking the other day, you know, if Obama had the opportunity to write the Constitution, that when it was being written, we wouldn't be the United States that we are today. Give that some thought as to the direction that we seem to be taking. My background has been in business. I started a business back in 1977. I had it for 27 years. I employed as many as 15 people. It wasn't that large a business. And I sold it in 2004. I found that if I were to try and open up that business today, with all the restrictions, all the regulations, everything that takes place on a government level, I would have been able to do it. Back in 1977, I went and applied for my business license, and they didn't give it to me. They said, it'll be in the mail. Don't worry about it. I opened up the business. I called them up. I said, I've opened up. Don't worry, it'll be in the mail. Can you imagine that happening today? They just wouldn't let you open the door. So I think that we need to take a look at the things that are happening, and we want to know why businesses aren't opening, why businesses aren't expanding, why they're not hiring people. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, like Patrick, I'd like to thank Dave and thank the White Mountain Tea Party group, as well as the Canada Republicans and the Canada Republicans. My name is Gabe Martin, for those of you who I didn't get to meet on the way in. I'm actually born and raised here. I just live up the street in Eager. I've learned that there's a difference between Eager and Springerville by doing this. I'm often corrected whether I live in Eager or Springerville, but you know, we just got the chance to celebrate the 4th of July. Because we had the chance to participate in events all around the district. Got to meet a lot of people and had time to think. I was on the road a lot. And think about the 4th of July and think about our freedoms. You know, this fall we're going to have a choice. We've got a choice whether we're going to continue down the path we're on of government regulation, of taxation, of government intrusion in our personal rights and for our businesses, and if we're going to continue to get locked out of our public lands, the lands that we hold dear here. We can change that. That's not a path that we need to continue down. I think as we look at our elected representatives, as we look at who we send to Washington, and in fact it starts a little sooner than this fall. Early voting starts August 3rd. For those of you who are going to get ballots, it's only about 3 weeks out we're going to start voting. You need to be thinking about who is going to represent your interests. Who is going to be committed to tax reform, is going to be committed to developing the private sector, getting the government out of the way, is going to be committed to getting the government out of our personal lives and our rights, is going to be committed to securing our border and making sure that America continues as the world power. You know, I had the chance to work over in Iraq and travel a little bit internationally, and while I was doing that, I got the chance to meet a lot of people from around the world, and on the surface there are those who immediately dismiss America. They say they don't like us. They say they don't care for us. They say there are certain things about our society or our culture or our government that they don't like. But inevitably, as we look at the world, as we look at our position as a world leader, the world looks to us. We need to ask ourselves, are we going to cede that, Are we going to continue? Are we going to lead from behind? That was a statement from an Obama administration official when talking about Libya. We'll just lead from behind. Is that really the position we want? Is that the direction of America? Is that what we want for my future children, for my nephews and nieces, for our family? Or do we have leaders and elected officials who can create a vision that keeps us on the path of being the world power? We don't apologize for that. We treat it respectfully. And we treat others respectfully. And we try to instill the principles of democracy and freedom for citizens all around the world, not just here in the U.S., but we start here. We have domestic problems we need to take care of. We need to take care of that in our Congress. We need to take care of that in the White House. I'm grateful for the opportunity to run. I'm grateful for the opportunity to travel around the district and meet good people. I have a great family, and I thank you for my parents and my family and friends for being here today. And I look forward to your vote this fall. Thank you.
My name is Jonathan Paton. I've served in the United States Army as a combat veteran. I've also served in the Arizona State Senate with Sylvia. But one of the most formative experiences for me, and really gets to the core of why I'm doing this, happened when I was an exchange student in Germany in 1989. 1989-1990 was an important moment in world history. That was the year that the Berlin Wall fell. And right after the wall fell, there was the first free election in East German history since the fall of the Weimar Republic in the 30s. And the family I was living with asked me if I wanted to go visit their first party congress for the Conservative Party in Germany. I did it. I met a family. We stayed with the family there. And there was a 16-year-old kid in East Germany, and he had a wall in his room that was basically like a shrine to America. Every single picture you could think of that he put on the wall to represent this country, but there was two pictures in particular that were important to him. And the first picture was that of Ronald Reagan. And it was Ronald Reagan in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And it was that famous moment when he said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And I asked him why he had that picture on the wall, and he said, because that is the example about how America said something and it happened. It was an example of American vision to fight communism, to stand up for the rights of freedom throughout the world, and it happened. And he put it on his wall, and it was, he said he put it on there because it was a perfect example of the greatness of America. Of course, the other picture was of Michael Jackson, so I'm not really sure how that all washes. But the important thing is, if you compare that to our president today, our president's vision right now is not to be great. Our president simply wants America to be like every other country in the world. That young man in that city in East Germany believed in America for one simple reason. It wasn't our military might, although I'm a soldier and I love the Army and I love the armed forces. It wasn't our economic might. It was the freedoms that are guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States. That's what makes this country great. And that's why I'm running, because I swore an oath to protect and defend that Constitution. And it's my belief that we need members of Congress that are going to be your warriors going to Congress to fight for your freedoms and fight for your liberties. Thank you very much.
My name is Doug Wade. Thank you for inviting me to come back and speak with you again. These surely are times that try men's souls. And my mother would say, please add women to that. These are times that try women's souls as well. With everything that's going on in this country today, this is not a time for timidity, for Americans to be timid, to turn the other cheek. This is not the time. We are in a very tough time in America. I too am a veteran. At 18 years of age, I stepped up to serve in the middle of the Vietnam War. I served in the Army. I was honorably discharged from the 10th Special Forces. I came back to America. I went to the university. I used the GI Bill. And I'll tell you, that's the only time I've ever used a government benefit in my life. Since then, I've worked entirely in the private sector. A couple of years ago, after Obama was elected, And I realized where this country was truly headed down the wrong track. Down the wrong track led by a permanent political class in America, permanent politicians, and crony capitalists, and crony bankers that are all in bed together in Washington, D.C. We are in deep trouble, and we pretty much all know it. What Dave alluded to with regard to the dependency on government is that we are a divided people and a divided nation, clearly. We're divided by class. But the two classes are this: those dependent on government versus those who still love liberty, freedom, and the American way. I am one of those. I never chose to go to work for government, although I've had many, many opportunities to do so. After my military experience, they wanted to enlist me into the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and those sort of things. I was married, my first wife worked for the government, so I was married to the government for 15 years, so to speak. And in my career, I've worked with city, state, federal, and county government. Now, this is the election of our lifetime. We have choices to make. The choices are continue to elect the same old permanent politicians and expect a different result, or we're elect people from the private sector with some real business experience, common experience, husband, father, wife, military experience, and business experience. Thank you very much.
I invite you from the audience to come up. While you're doing that, okay, we've got our first question.
First question is,
And please speak up.
the first question is to all of them up there on the time. If the worst thing would have happened, Obama got reelected, would you support articles of impeachment for the immediate violations of the Constitution?
The question was to all the gentlemen, one at a time. Once again, we'll start with Mr. Gaddy. If the worst happens and our current president is reelected, would they support articles of impeachment against him? And I'm going to add why in case I didn't hear that.
I think that a long time ago, he should have been impeached for some of the things that he's done. I would certainly support that. And I believe that he is, for a constitutional attorney, he hasn't exhibited any kind of knowledge or belief in the Constitution. And I think you find that every one of us up here supports the Constitution to its utmost. And I don't believe that he does. And I think he needs to be impeached, whether he's re-elected or not.
I know this is worst case scenario, but I just want to put the plug in for everybody getting out to vote this fall so we don't get there. That's the first thing. Get our friends and family and everybody out to vote and we won't have this worst case scenario. But if that were the case, yes, I would support that. And I tell you why. When we look at things like Fast and Furious, elements of the government that whether the president was directly responsible for, he has most certainly been part of covering up and allowing those in his administration to act illegally and not being willing to step forward and be brave enough to say, you know what, someone made a mistake, we need to remove that. You know, the leader of the free world has an obligation that is not just legal, it's moral and ethical. And he has a responsibility not to just us, but to represent us to the world. And when we have a president who is unwilling to do that, then I think those are grounds for removing him. But again, I think the most important thing is that they'll turn out and vote this fall.
You know, when they wrote the Constitution in the first place, there were commentaries on it that were made up by different people at the time. And the ratification in Virginia of the Constitution, they said that as high crimes and misdemeanors, if he misbehaves or he behaves amiss, if you are acting in an unconstitutional way, you have failed to protect and defend the Constitution, and you deserve to be impeached, you deserve to be removed from office. That's my belief.
That was a great question, and the answer to your question is yes. I would support articles of impeachment, because much of his actions have already proven to be unconstitutional. Many of the decisions that he's making to not enforce laws that we currently have, that surely should be grounds for impeachment. To not pursue actively prosecution in this Fast and Furious case is another perfect example. We should be pursuing prosecution, if not impeachment. And what Patrick Gaddy had to say about President Obama being a constitutional professor, well, he didn't profess how to defend the Constitution. What he was professing at the University of Chicago was how to usurp or get around the Constitution. Another good reason why he should be impeached. Thank you.
Senator Allen.
Good afternoon. I just want to tell you that I think we have 4 wonderful candidates. I think the Republican Party puts forward some wonderful candidates, and I thank all of you for running and being willing to do that. My question has to do with the $1.4 or $6 trillion deficit that this current congressional budget, meaning that we have overspent by $1 trillion+ the money that this government is taking in. This is such a serious thing, and as a senator, I faced this the last so many sessions where we had to deal with $3 billion, and there's only one way out, and it's cut spending. Convince us that you have the courage to cut the spending from these entitlement programs, to cut spending from EPA, get rid of some of these things. I'll give you a list. I got a good list of things we can cut, but we have got to get this budget in balance. Thank you.
Mr. Gaddy, you want to address that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Just a second. Yes, I was planning on the same order, if that's okay.
You know, there isn't one business that doesn't take a look at what happens when you aren't receiving the money that you need to receive. And that's the fact with the federal government. They've got so used to how much were the houses? The houses had homes, residents, and a lot of value to them, and they were getting taxed. Those taxes will go to the state, will go to the federal government. People aren't making the money that they used to make. I would absolutely find no problem with getting rid of the EPA, the Department of Education, and any other department that comes across that we obviously need to get rid of. And I think overspending is ridiculous.
Most definitely, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a problem that is going to take a number of years to fix when we look at our federal deficit. It's not something that's going to happen in 6 months or a year when we can turn around. We need to right the ship. We have to start. And we need to start by having a budget, first of all. We need a budget that's proposed, that's balanced, that helps us start to spend responsibly out of the gate, and then we can start tackling the deficit. And then we can look at some of the long-term deficits that are out there, some of the challenges we have with Social Security, some of the challenges that are out there with some of the entitlement programs, and we can address that. But I think as you look at your choice in a candidate and how we reassure you, you look at the way we run our campaigns. You can look at what we've done in our private lives. You can look at what we've done in our professional lives. You can be assured that that we commit to you that we're going to be fiscally responsible and that we're not going to run the U.S. government into a debt. That while we were serving in the state legislature, we didn't vote to put the state of Arizona into debt. Those are things that we can do, and those are assurances that you need to have from your elected officials as you send them to Washington, and that you can trust that we will be fiscally responsible, that we'll tackle the budget, and we'll tackle the deficit. So thank you.
I agree with what Gaither said, that you look in our professional lives and you can look and see what we've done in the past. And when I served with Sylvia in the state Senate, I voted for the largest spending cut in state history. And it was a cut so big that my brother, who's a public school teacher, lost his job. Now that makes for an awkward Thanksgiving, let me tell you, when you do that. But it was the right thing to do. I had the courage to do it then. We cut, it was at least, I think we had $11 billion budget the year before. Revenues dropped, we went down to $8 billion that year. It was the largest in state history. I've got the courage to do it when I'm in Washington, D.C., because I've done it before, and I've lived under a balanced budget in our state of Arizona. Thank you.
Sylvia, thanks for the kind words to all four of us for running. I'll share with you from a personal point of view. I've never run for office before. It's not anything I ever really wanted to do before. My wife and I, over long discussions, decided that I would take this chance to run, to try to make a difference in America and try to leave in America to my daughters a better place. Now, the question about the debt and the deficit. It is the greatest threat to our national security and our Constitution in our history. And if we don't get it under control and get it under quickly, we are facing a debt crisis, a debt bomb, a debt collapse, a national bankruptcy. The very, very worst thing that could happen to us, far worse than this 5-year recession that we've gone through. So I will vote for cuts, 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 and oh my gosh, there's a million places we could go with that.
On the same subject, gentlemen, when I just read an article this morning that they have recently found that trillions of dollars was misspent in Iraq. And when politicians and people calling for cuts ask for where to cut, it's always entitlement programs and those things that help Americans. I want to know how willing you are to curb our foreign aggression, our wars that we're never winning any longer, and to look at our own government first and where we are wasting money. Thank you.
I am going to change the order. I'm going to start with Mr. Martin on that, and then in future, I will move down the table in our starting rotation.
Thanks, certainly. And, you know, having actually spent a little bit of time in Iraq, worked over there, and having worked for the State Department, I can tell you without pause that I think we can take any government agency, any entity, whether that's Department of State, whether that's Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, and we could cut budgets from anywhere from 15 to 20% off the top, and we wouldn't reduce services. Now, that's what the liberals are going to tell you, that immediately if we take those budget cuts, that we're going to have to fire people, there'll be people on the streets, and I just don't believe that. I think that we can have those cuts, we can start there, and we also need to be more prudent, most definitely, as we look at our role in the international world. There's no doubt. We're in over a combined 20 years of war between Afghanistan and Iraq. Our soldiers have been taxed. We need to be careful about, as we move forward, and be judicious about where and when we use our military. But there's no doubt we can cut our government spending. It's not just entitlements, but the budget's across the board.
I think one of the most important duties in Congress that was listed in Article 1, Section 8 is the duty to declare war. And we have been going into these conflicts without that declaration from Congress, and it's my belief that we should be declaring war, not only because it puts the entire nation behind the effort, but it also gives the troops the understanding that they're going to be supported by everyone, and it's not just one president that makes that decision, it's the entire government of the United States. Now, with that said, I was a soldier in Iraq, and I can tell you I did see a lot of waste when I was there. I witnessed it. I watched contractors who were in Iraq that refused to fly in Black Hawk helicopters being paid over $100,000 a year, or for a 6-month tour of duty, that refused to do their job, and they could get away with it because they weren't green-suited soldiers. That's a problem to me. As a soldier, we need to have more accountability across the board in government, regardless of where it is. Thank you.
One of the enumerated powers of Congress is to create money and determine the value thereof, something Congress abdicated to the Federal Reserve back in 1913. We're approaching a 100-year anniversary of the year 1913, where we had to actually completely and do a historical audit of the Fed, bring them back under the control, and get our monetary system back under the control of Congress, or a designated authority of professionals that would understand how to secure our dollar and not waste our money. would do and that I would promise everyone is that if you elect me, if you vote for me, I will work feverishly and tirelessly in Congress to protect your money. That's the money you make, the money you earn, the money you should keep, the money that should not be taken from you by overtaxation, overregulation, over legislation. Government is too big, they do too much, and they take too much from us. It's time to get government under control, shrink it. And then go right to the military budget and the Department of Defense as well. Thank you.
Mr. Gale.
There are so many different programs that exist in the federal government that should never have started in the first place. And if we got rid of the EPA and the Department of Education, and, you know, like what Doug said, crying out loud, why in the world is that ever started back in 1930? That absolutely needs to be stopped. Our military aggression is to protect ourselves. We're supposed to be protecting ourselves. We're not supposed to be out there spending money. There are too many avenues that exist for waste when we go to a foreign country. I would certainly fight for that.
Thank you, gentlemen, for stepping up late and running. It's not an easy thing to do, and certainly appreciate the time that you're spending and all the effort you're putting forward. My question is dealing with state sovereignty. I think we have an overreach of the federal government. A lot of things that we've done at the state, Sylvia and I worked very hard to try and take some of those state rights back to protect their sovereignty. This year, we will have on the ballot in November that everyone will have an opportunity to vote for, and that's to declare, under the Arizona State Constitution, that we are a sovereign state. We can take over the management of all of our land, air, water, natural resources, everything within the state boundaries. My question to you four is that when we start pushing back and taking back our rights to manage what's within our state, how are you going to support us, and what can you do to pull the encroachment of the federal government back so that we can accomplish what we need to be on an equal footing with the other states in the United States?
The question, in case you didn't hear, the question concerns state sovereignty and the initiative on the fall ballot for Arizona to start exercising sovereignty and taking back public lands. And Representative Crandall would like to know what these four gentlemen would do to support that movement in Washington.
Well, I can start with the fact that I signed a ballot argument in favor of that ballot measure last week. So, I mean, that was the first thing that I did. I also looked at in my history in the legislature we got the Prop 113 on the ballot, which got rid of the possibility of the federal government telling us what to do regarding card check, protecting our state, our right to a secret ballot. The federal government was trying to tell unions that they could go ahead and form without a vote for the secret ballot. We said that was wrong. We asserted our rights under the 9th and the 10th Amendments, and we're fighting in Congress. We're fighting a battle with the National Labor Relations Board over that. Those are the biggest issues in this district, and for this reason. Every single problem that we have, for the most part, in CD1 is all because the federal government is overreaching its powers, is overreaching its responsibilities, and is holding the people down in this district. Whether you're from in the forest, in northern Arizona, the Resolution Mine in Globe, or down to the cotton fields of Marana. That's the problem that we're facing, and that's what needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Chester, great question, and thank you both, Sylvia and yourself, for doing what you're doing and pushing for states' rights and state sovereignty. Federal government has been growing bigger and bigger and more powerful since 1913, if we want to go back to that, or we want to go back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the New Deal during the Depression, where he grew government, added government, grew the entitlements, and made government grow, grow, grow. It's been growing ever since. Federal government now controls probably 50% of our economy, And if Obamacare continues to move forward, it will control well over 50% of our economy, and then we'll be a centrally controlled government and nation. Our individual rights, our state rights, our sovereignty is all slipping away, like Dave said. Our freedoms and rights are slipping away and disappearing. If we continue to elect perennial politicians instead of some common sense folks from the private sector, we're going to get the government we deserve.
Thank you very much for the questions. You know, I was on city council for 27 years, and I found that the county was always trying to take money from us. I found that the state was always trying to take money from us. And this was a city that had a 10% reserve. The United States needs to have a reserve. The problem is every time that they get to that point, that's when they're going to take the money away, and they're going to use it. State sovereignty is something that maybe will catch on, and other states will do the same thing. State sovereignty is something that maybe other states will look at, just like they take a look at the immigration law. I mean, we've got something on the books that we could actually enforce, and hopefully we'll be able to enforce the same thing with state sovereignty.
Thanks, Chester. The genesis of what Chester's getting at, I think, really comes from the abuse of the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. What the 10th Amendment tells us is that there are certain things that are outlined that are the role of the federal government here in the Constitution, and then pretty much everything else we're going to leave to the states. Now, what you've seen is the federal government saying, well, actually, we want to be involved in everything else. And so what we need to do is the Congress get back to making sure we're adhering all of the rules, laws, regulations we look at here in the 10th Amendment. I'll always side with the state and pushing things down to a state and a local level. Things are handled better at a local level. As we look at what we can do or what the role of your congressman would be, I think through appropriations, we can put pressure on, for instance, the Department of Agriculture and Forest Plans to have a quantitative approach to local and state input for forest plans. It's not a plan that just comes down from Washington. Not just holding a town hall, but look at quantitative ideas where we involve the state and the local citizens to federal problems. So, thank you.
This is a two-part question to all candidates. The FBI has recently been ordered to purge its counterterrorism training materials of all references to Islamic Jihad, cultural jihad, and violent undercurrents of Islam. Barack Hussein Obama called Major Nidal Hassan's act of jihad a forthright of workplace violence. A New Jersey court acquitted a Muslim man of raping his wife because in Islam there's no such thing as raping your wife. She must submit. Information dominance about the true nature of Islamic jihad, both violent and cultural, has been ceded to Islamic groups. Sharia law is encroaching at our courts. What's your plan to restore information dominance in our security forces and military about the true violent nature of Islam? What's your plan to stem the tide of cultural jihad and the encroachment of Sharia in our courts?
The question, in case you didn't hear it, concerns the encroachment of Sharia law into United States law and what they can do to, how they can fight that and restore the United States constitutional law over any religious law. And starting with Mr. Wade.
I will say simply that this is America, not Islam. Islam is a manner of governance and religion that can kind of tells folks what they can do and what they can't do and everything. Sharia law is also a system that manages their system of governments, not ours. Our First Amendment guarantees our right to freedom. Everybody can attend the church or the faith of their desire. But our governance is not ruled by our religion, and never should be. So I would fight feverishly to make sure Sharia law is not implemented anywhere in this nation ever under my watch.
You know, that's an excellent question, and it's a sad question. It's sorrowful that we even have to contemplate the idea that Sharia law and Islam would have anything at all whatsoever to do with the United States. I would do whatever was necessary to pass a resolution that reiterates what our Constitution is. Again, we are a constitutional country. We have a doctrine that tells us what to do, how to live. We have to reaffirm that, whatever it takes to get it listed, so that people understand that you can do whatever religion you want. Don't be saying that you can't have your choice of religion. But for us to have the answers to Islam is a sin. And I mean, it's just a shame that has to be brought into our life. But I would fight that prospect.
So there's no doubt that as we look at our national security as an issue, there are going to be elements and actors who use radical Islam and other excuses in order to go to war with the U.S., to go to war with other countries, to take criminal or strategic action against us, and to think that we wouldn't deal with a certain group because all of a sudden they're off limits, all of a sudden because of whatever belief. Many belief systems are used and abused by bad elements, and we need to be willing to go after them no matter who they are, where they are, in the United States, outside the United States. As I look at judicial activism in the U.S., as I look at judges who are willing to say, this is the path of the future, not here is the Constitution in which I adhere, it's a challenge and it's a problem. So Sharia law has no place in the U.S. whatsoever. We have a Constitution. The Constitution served us well. It will continue to serve us well. We just need to follow it. And we need to have judges who are not taking judicial activism to a next level and justifying the actions of groups or individuals because they think it broadens us or opens it up when it's clearly against the Constitution and does not help and hurts our national security interests.
In Iraq, I had the opportunity to talk to a detainee that we picked up that was trying to place IEDs in northern Iraq, and he was being taken down to Camp Crawford for interrogation. And I got a chance to ask him a question that I think a lot of us would like to ask the people that we've been fighting. And I said, why are you doing this? So what's your goal? He said, we want to kill as many Americans as we can. We want you to see it on your television sets at night, and we want you to pull away your support from Israel. I said, fine, if we accomplish that, then what do you want to do? He said, where are you from? I said, I was born and raised in Arizona. He said, we'll go to your country and we'll kill as many Americans as we can in California, in New York, and Arizona. That's the nature of the enemy that we're fighting right now, ladies and gentlemen. And the way we deal with it is with the Constitution of the United States. We have a Bill of Rights. We have the Constitution that is supposed to protect our rights, protect the form of government that we believe in, and that's what I want to do when I go to Congress. Thank you.
Barry's going to take the mic right now. We're taking a brief break, and
yeah, one or two brief items of business. My name is Barry Weller. I'm the Apache County Republican Party Chairman. I don't think I told you that. And I'm running for the Board of Supervisors in Paton County, District 3. It came to mind because I'm not seeing the enthusiasm from this audience that made me get off my tail and run for office. I'm appreciating the questions, I'm appreciating the politeness and generality of the questions, but I'm angry about what's going on. Some of these gentlemen mentioned that, and I think the majority of the people in this nation are angry about what's going on. And I ask you to please participate. The The reason I'm up here is to remind you, this is a long meeting. There's food in the back for a bake sale going on, and there's literature over here. But I'm going to ask that we do about a 5-minute break only, and then we will demand people to come back, give you the ability to stretch your legs, get a bite to eat if you want, and work up that energy and bring those questions at us. Thank you.
I didn't think to look way over there.
Lightest chances against Obama because he doesn't follow my instructions.
You almost thought of it.
Mr. Wade. Thank you. Griff's here without falling off the ideas, and we can start with.
My name is Gordon Dickerson. I'm here this afternoon. My question for you is,
I'll repeat the question if you can't hear.
the Arizona legislature over the last several years has been trying to build illegal immigration in our state. And we've done a lot of different things to try to do what we can do as a state to try to rein in the illegal parties coming across our border and people that are educating, incarcerating, and everything on the dime. One of the bills that they recently passed was Senate Bill 1070. My question for you is two-part. Four gentlemen up here, which of you would have supported Senate Bill 1070 if you were in the Arizona legislature? And who has experience, real-world experience, real-life experience dealing with our neighbors to the south, and take that experience
The question deals with 1070 and how they feel about it, what they would do to support it, and how they could fight off the federal government suing us to enforce it. I think that encapsulates it pretty well. Thank you. We're going to start with you, sir. Okay, we're going to start with Mr. Kenny. We'll work our way down the table.
I came from Southern California, and I was on the city council for about 21 years. And with that, we had, unfortunately, in our city, we had many illegal immigrants that showed up. I used to go out with our police department, not so much a ride along, but generally I was invited to take a look and see how many people live in one house. And what is necessary to do to get these folks to understand and get them out and send them back across the border. I would have voted for 1070. I think that 1070 was a very responsible and well thought out law that was passed. I met with Joe Arpaio, and he indicated that he gave me his full support as I did him. And I really respect that man for what he's done and what he intends on doing. So I would support him.
You know, I would unequivocally support 1070. But I think even if you look at the design of 1070, it was not as a fix-all for the immigration problem. I would support the right of the state to protect itself, the right of the state to secure itself, and do whatever the state need thinks is necessary here. You know, the Supreme Court, again, with their latest judgment on 1070, let us know that the immigration issue is going to continue to be a federal issue. So that is the burden on us. That is the burden on your U.S. congressmen, on your U.S. senators to go to Washington and come up with an immigration plan that is helpful and useful for the country as a whole, and also be able to protect the rights of the citizens of Arizona. So, you know, in my time in Iraq, I had the chance to see what it's like when you have a porous border. In 2005 and 2006, when things were terrible in Iraq, because everyone was coming in from Syria. Our border is a national security issue. It is an issue that we need to handle in the guise of national security. We need to secure ourselves, secure our border, and the federal government needs to take the lead role in that, needs to take care of that.
Well, I voted for Senate Bill 1070. And when I did that, it looks like a smart move now, but I can tell you at the time, there was a lot of controversy surrounding it. People were trying to get us to vote no. I was told by many people, we'll never support you again if you vote for this bill. But I did it because it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing for Arizona, and we have to be able to send a message to those who are here in our country illegally. You go through the front door, you don't go through the back door. You do it the way Americans have been doing it for over 200 years. Now the second question is, what have I been doing, or what experience do I have of dealing with border security? I was the Senate Judiciary Chair, and I made sure that Senate Bill 1070 got to a vote. It was put up for a vote. I was also on the Border Legislative Commission, and I was one of the few conservatives on there. Ward and I were on there together, and we fought for border security every single time. There is not one bill that went to the legislature that did not crack down on illegal immigration that I did not support when I was in the legislature. Thank you.
It was a twofold question. The answer to the first question is yes. If I had been in the state legislature, I would have supported SB 1070 as a bill that certainly would add more tools to our law enforcement to help run our own laws and stick with our rule of law. Now, real world personal experience is this. After college, I wanted to become a builder or a contractor, but the very first thing I did was I strapped on carpentry tools to learn how to build from the ground up. Moved down to Sierra Vista in Bisbee long ago, 35 years ago, and worked as a carpenter. Now, I've spent a decade down there in Cochise County, living in rural areas, seeing the devastating effect of illegal immigration into this state for 39 years, especially in construction, diminishing wages. We got to a point where 50% of our construction workers in Arizona were virtually Hispanic and illegal aliens. Not good.
Republican primary when it was in. So, why should I vote for any one of you over the other to defeat Nancy and Pelosi Patrick? Why are you the one that I should vote for?
In a very amusing way, Paul has just asked why any of you should vote for me if one of them wins the primary. Why should
the primary go against?
That's right. Why should you vote for any one of these people to be the person to face Nancy and Pelosi Kirkpatrick? So I believe we're going to start with Mr. Martin on that. Please, gentlemen, also let me remind you, please be specific in this rather than just telling us how you feel about various things. Thank you.
Thanks. As we look at this fall, and as we come out of what happened in December, which was the redistricting that happened for the state, and we have a congressional district now, CD1, that is largely the same as it was before. We lost part of Pinal County, picked up some area in the south, but it was designed to be a rural district. And the rural areas have advocated for years to have a voice, so that our voice isn't thrown in and drowned out in Maricopa County or in Pima County. It's a rural district in a rural area. I was born and raised in this district. My family's in this district. I have generations of family in this district. When I look at representing and having the opportunity to run against Dan, it's because I believe that I have a legacy to uphold. I believe that as I look to the future of what's important to this district, I haven't read about it. I haven't just seen it in the papers. I haven't driven and visited it. I've lived it. And I've been here. I was born and raised with, again, my good parents are here and had the chance, the opportunity to grow up here. And I think that's important because the issues that are important to us, the issues that are important to this district in rural Arizona are not the same for every congressional district in the state of Arizona. They're not the same at the Senate level. They're not the same nationally. We have specific needs, we have unique needs and unique issues, and that's why I think I can beat Dan going in the election this fall. Thanks.
Every single thing that we've talked about today, every single issue that we've talked about, we can all say the same thing, but I have a record, every single issue, including Senate Bill 1070. I can point to something that I've done to expand liberty in this state, and I'm going to do the same thing in Washington, D.C. I've represented 3 rural border counties. This district now goes from Utah all the way down to southern Arizona. It is now a statewide district. Simple as that. The Democrats created this district for one simple reason and one reason only, and that was to divide Arizonans. That's why it's so big. They made a mistake because I'm going to win, and I'm going to beat Ann Kirkpatrick, and I'm going to hold that character in the White House accountable and make sure that he does not achieve re-election, and we are going to take this country back. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I can win, and that's why I want to be your next congressman. Thank you.
This district, unfortunately, the way the redistricting turned out, didn't turn out very good for conservatives or Republicans, I'll tell you that right now. They got all the Indian reservations they could into one district, and they ramped up a few percentage points in favor of the Democrats, and Kirkpatrick, who was our candidate. She had a lot of money, 1.3, I think. And the negative attack ads have already begun. It's a tough district. It's going to be a tough race. It's going to come down to the independent vote. I personally am someone who doesn't have a voting record. I haven't been in politics my whole life. I haven't been a political consultant. I haven't been a lobbyist. I haven't been a career politician. But I'll tell you this, I can appeal to folks, and I can appeal extremely well to the independent vote. Thank you.
I believe that I've got legislative experience. I've got the background. I've got the business background. I know exactly what Ann Kirkpatrick is going to do to any one of us. He's besides the attack acts which will inevitably take place. You're going to have to take a look at each one of us and decide which one of us is honest, sincere, and has the background to be able to take care of Anne Kirkpatrick. Because I agree, like everybody else does, that she is inevitably going to be the one that we're going to have to fight against. Thank you.
I'm going to take this question right here, and then I have a question from the audience, and then we'll go with you. Okay? Microphone.
Stop sound up and down. And my question is, Ron Paul is largely the board on getting out of the UN and getting out of the Federal Reserve System. And I felt like that forever, never not just this election. You got to get out of that. Everyone watching, I don't know what you got to say about this. Get out, or if you can agree with something about it. UN.
The question was from apparently a Ron Paul supporter, which perhaps many are. What would they do about extricating the United States from the United Nations and getting us out of and away from the Federal Reserve? And I believe we're starting with Jonathan.
We have no business belonging to any organization that is basically run by dictators, run by countries that hate us, and is trying to pass things for our own state that would deal with conservation, but really is a land grab on a global scale. And even worse, is trying to take away our Second Amendment rights. That's the UN right now. The second thing is that Federal Reserve, we need to find out exactly what they've been doing since the beginning of the last century. We need to know exactly how they've been spending their money and how they've been going about things. We need an audit of the Fed. We need it yesterday. We need it today. If I'm in Congress, I'm going to make sure that we follow up and hold them accountable for everything they've done. Thank you.
I'll share a little piece of truth with you. I'm a new hybrid Republican. I haven't always been a Republican. I spent most of my adult life as an independent. The reason being, neither party has been conservative enough for me. In 1980, when under the first year of Ronald Reagan, when we hit $1 trillion in debt, I was in shock then. We're at $16 trillion now. Now, much of it has to do, and I've already said what I say, I won't repeat what I said about the Federal Reserve. Yes, they should be fully audited, and then we should get our dollar, our money, back into the control of constitutional authority, which is our Congress. The next question was what? I'm sorry, I forgot. United Nations. Yeah, get out of it. They hate us anyway. Thank you.
You know, the likelihood of us getting out of the UN, though that may be what we all want to do, while we're there, we need to have somebody who's strong that's representing the United States. We need a strong ambassador to the UN. We need somebody that gets into the UN that actually does some fighting. The UN, if we're going to get out of the UN, then we need to get the UN out of the United States. And once that happens, then we're okay. Let them go make their decision someplace else. Leave the whole building, take it over for some other use. Not as a function where they're going to tell us if we're doing what we need to do and how we should live our life, and have Ahmadinejad come over and get on television on our ground and make fun of us and tell us what we're doing wrong. We need to get out of the UN.
Well, probably the easiest way to deal with the UN is to stop paying for it, first of all. You know, through our appropriations. So if you're looking at the role of your congressman and the role of appropriations, that's what we can do. That's what I can do. We can stop funding the UN now. I'm not opposed to a forum international ideas and international problems. But the idea that the UN would have any sort of sovereignty or ability to enact any law, enact any regulation here in the U.S. Is something that I would oppose adamantly. So that's and now with the Federal Reserve, there's no doubt we need to audit the Federal Reserve. We need to take a look at the role of the Fed. We need to look at our currency. We need to look at the ability of the White House to influence our currency, to just spend, to just print, to continue to print, how that affects international markets, how that affects our own economy, and how that affects our debt. And that is the role of the Congress, that is the role of the Congress. Thank you.
Okay, I want to remind everybody that we will get to all questioners, so don't panic, you're not being pushed aside or anything. I now have 2 questions, and for the first one, we are going to go straight to the 10-second mark. This is a yes or no question, but I am going to give you 10 seconds to deal with it. Mr. Wade, the question is for all candidates. Did you vote in the last primary and general election in Arizona? It's for all candidates. It's a yes or no question, but I am going to give you 10 seconds. Did you vote in the last primary and general election in Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, got that out of the way. Now, the question I originally intended. The Patriot Act, Department of Homeland Security, TSA, and NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, were passed to protect national security. How do you balance national security concerns with the Bill of Rights in a post-9/11 world? That would be Mr. Gaddy. I'll repeat the question. How do you balance national security concerns of these departments and acts with the Bill of Rights in a post-9/11 world?
Okay.
That obviously is a very difficult question because we do have to defend our borders, we have to defend our airspace, we have to defend everything that we've got around us. Our Bill of Rights is what we should adhere to.
I've already asked him,
We
I'm just
have
going to restate it because he didn't answer it.
TSA has done an incredible job at times, but they've also created an incredible problem. Air travel is worse than it's ever been. We need better machinery that takes the place of those individuals that don't appear to have any concern for the people that are going through to try and fly. I think I would just fall back to the Bill of Rights.
One of the precise roles of our government is to protect our individual rights, not to encroach on them. And it's a hard balance to strike, to be sure, on our national security versus our civil liberties. I was in Amman, Jordan, when bombings happened in 2006 and hotels were bombed. My family thought I was in America in a hotel that was bombed and were concerned for a while. And I saw what happens when people immediately lose the sense of security that their government is there to provide and are willing to give up their civil liberties. That's a challenge that we have to balance. The government should never have the right to encroach on our individual and civil liberties. It should do everything it can to keep us secure. We need to secure our border. We need to make sure that our intelligence apparatuses have all the ability that they need to gather, to find bad guys throughout the world, to protect us. But at the same time, as individuals, we need to be careful whether we're differentiating a civil liberty versus another 30 minutes in an airport line and our convenience. And so I think that's a personal question we need to think about. As we look at our federal government, as sometimes we're critical of our security apparatuses and how it's encroaching on simple conveniences when people are just trying to keep us safe, but we should never compromise our civil liberties or give them up to the TSA or any other government organization.
We already have.
I served as an intelligence officer for the U.S. Army, and I would say that over time, having been in the war and until today, I've changed my mind quite a bit. First of all, during when the war started, we had a different president. And now I look at this new president and I say to myself, I'm worried about my civil rights with this president being in the White House. I look at something like NDAA, I look at all these different things, and I say to myself, you know what? We have a constitution that says there are no unnecessary seizures, you have the right to a speedy trial, we have all those different things. And you know what? We do need to have one standard regardless of who the president is. We need to understand that what makes us great, like I said at the very beginning, was our liberties. It's not anything else. It's our liberties that make us great as a nation. And I'm afraid of giving or advocating or abrogating those rights to someone else simply because of security. And I don't believe that's the American way. Thank you.
The question goes back to balancing our civil liberties and our Bill of Rights against this 9/11 world of terrorism. And I believe that we've been, like we said before, our freedoms and our liberties are slipping away and slipping away and slipping away. So we've got the Patriot Act, and we've got this NDAA, and we've got these executive orders by this tyrannical president, if you will, doing too much and taking away our rights. And that needs to be dialed back and rolled back. Take the TSA, for example. TSA, 1,000 standing around. Every time I fly, it drives me nuts. You go to the airport, and there's all these people, and they want to frisk your privates. You know, it's just wrong. And if we keep going to the airport and laying down for that, we're going to lose our country. So we need to start dialing that back and getting back our civil liberties and our rights.
She asked about his 2007 vote for the large budget increase.
The budget that you're referring to, 2007, that had one of the biggest ticket items on that budget was something called the Get-In funds. That was to secure our border. And I felt representing 3 border counties that were constantly being overwhelmed by illegal aliens that cost us $18 million in incarceration fees alone. I felt that it was the right thing to do. We had the money at the time. When we didn't have the money, we cut it, because that's what you do when you're fiscally responsible. And it was one-time money. It wasn't an ongoing budget item. And I felt for border security, those issues are important to me and they're important to my constituents. I think they're important to everybody in this room. And that's why I voted the way I voted. Thank you.
Given the recent events of Dear Lord, Michigan, where there were a group of Christians who were stoned by Muslims and no assault charges were filed, I was asked to restate this question. What specific actions would you take to restore information dominance in our security forces and military about the true violent nature of Islam? And what's your plan, or what specific steps would you take to stem the tide of cultural jihad and the encroachment of Sharia into our courts?
This is what I referred to earlier. We want specifics, gentlemen, on how you would deal with Sharia law. And this is in regard to the stoning of Christians by Muslims in Michigan with no assault charges being filed. So we're starting with Mr. Martin.
Sure. And, you know, as your congressman, again, I would reiterate partially, Jim, my first answer, and that is there is under no circumstances should we allow any law to assert the Constitution or to assert local laws that have been in place. So whether, you know, I think we can put pressure from Washington on local officials, state officials, to make sure the Constitution and state laws and local laws are enforced. But under no circumstances, whether it's Sharia or any sort of law or religious practice, should usurp what we have in the Constitution. And I don't know how to put that any more clearly. That if we're talking about whether that's beating a spouse, whether that's stoning, whether that's reprisal killings, all of those things are against the law in the United States of America. and they shouldn't be supported, they shouldn't be condoned. They are against the law, and we need to continue to adhere and uphold the law.
I believe the actions that were referred to were unconstitutional, they were illegal, that you can't just let someone go because you don't want to offend them or whatever that might be. I think that is the reason why we need conservative judges on the bench. A member of Congress plays a huge role in advocating to get the best judges possible. Trent Franks in our state, who supported my campaign, has been a big advocate of getting conservative judges on the bench from his role in the U.S. Congress. I think we need to make sure that we get the best and the brightest, and those who are strict constructionists that actually believe in the rule of law and believe in the Constitution and what it stands for. But I think that we also need to look at things like I helped pass in the state of Arizona that said there's something called libel tourism, where you can go to another country in order to sue somebody for libel in this country. We said in our state we will not recognize any other court in our state if they do not follow the same level of protections that are afforded with the Constitution of the United States. You cannot collect a judgment in the state of Arizona. That wasn't something I just talked about. That was something I did. And that's something that I believe in, and we have to stop other people dictating to us what our Constitution means. We know what it means. We grew up knowing what it means. For over 200 years, that has been the article of faith in this country. Thank you.
For those of you that don't know, Dearborn, Michigan is the largest population of Muslim people in America. It's about 300,000 people, Muslim, there. Much of the police force, the fire department, the city government, everything are Muslim people. Now, under our Constitution, people have the right to form their own government, even at the city level, the state level. So if we're talking about, abiding by our Constitution, getting back to our Constitution, the city, the state, we have the right to make our own laws. But when one race of people or religion of people attack people of another religion violently, and the laws of that city or that county or that state are not enforced to protect those citizens, the federal government should step in. Absolutely. But we've got a Department of Justice that won't do anything. We already know that. Eric Holder.
That's for sure.
That's quite unfortunate that Dearborn, Michigan couldn't take the initiative and file at least against those individuals that did the stoning. I would move on a rational level. I would move that Congress, the federal government would step in and through our Attorney General, who would not be our code because Obama's not going to be there. I would force him to go into a city like that and take a look at what the world was happening. Sharia law cannot take place of our Constitution. Sharia law belongs in Arab, in an Arab country someplace. It doesn't belong in the United States. So I would have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Sharia law.
Thank you. I'm 49. I've been paying Medicare taxes ever since I had my first job when I was 16. That's a third of a century. I'd like to know, do you support the Paul Ryan budget that proposes to privatize Medicare for people under 55? Thank you.
The question is, do they support the Paul Ryan budget which would privatize Medicare for a certain class of individuals?
My belief is you cannot, in good conscience, deny coverage to people who have been paying their entire lifetime into anything. That isn't right. We cannot allow in this country, whether it's Social Security, whether it's Medicare, what have you, if you've been paying into for your entire lifetime into something, you deserve to get that money back. Now, if you're younger, and I can tell you I'm 41, and I don't believe I'm ever going to see a dime of the money that I put into Social Security. I think most young people believe that today. We should be able to do with our own money what we want to. And I think that's the right way to go. I don't think it's right that, however, that if you are a senior and you've been putting in your money for most of your life, or even if you're under 55, I still don't think most of your life has been spent paying into that system. No one has the right to take that away from you, in my opinion. Thank you.
What was your name? What was your name?
Oh, my name is Eli Blake.
Eli? Eli, I'm 61 years old. I've been paying into Medicare and Social Security my entire adult life, pretty much. And I thought for 20 or 30 years that it isn't going to be there for me when I retire. And I'm quite afraid of that possibility even next year, the year after that. If America succumbs to a debt crisis or a financial collapse, I don't believe we're going to have Social Security and Medicare. Everybody's going to be struggling and sucking it up and living with family and helping each other. And that's the worst case scenario. But this year is the tipping point. If we can win this election, start to roll America back, roll this big government back, and get this economy going again, I believe we can secure Social Security and Medicare moving forward. But I think the younger generations moving forward, we should be looking at privatization for younger folks.
Social Security, I think what President Bush was attempting to do, I don't think he explained it well enough. But if you only take a percentage of what is supposed to be due in your account, and you're given the option to be able to put it where you want to put it, I think that Social Security should have a better return than 1%. There's one of us in this room that would put our money in an investment that would have a 1% return. I think that Social Security needs to be reorganized, revamped, remodeled, and it would start with the younger age, not with people that have been paying into it for 10 or 15 years. If we roll it back to the very beginning for children coming into the workforce, those individuals would be the ones that would fall back to a balanced Social Security. I really support Paul Ryan's budget, because I think that it's a budget that we need to work for, that we can work with, and I think it's something that will give us a better balance.
As we look at what Congressman Ryan has proposed, there's a lot of pieces of it that are really good, and there's a lot of pieces of it that will continue to be refined. But the main thing that Congressman Ryan, I think, is trying to get at for each of us, as your elected officials and also as citizens, is starting to think outside the box. And if we look at some of these programs, if you look at the Medicare Modernization Act of 2003, which started the health savings account, if you look at things that allow individuals to have their choice, do with their money what they would like, and to be rewarded. If you're not spending money, then that money, if you're not spending money on healthcare needs, on medicine, on prescription drugs or other things, then that money is making money for you. Those are the kinds of things that I think Congressman Ryan is trying to get at, and that all of us should support. And that's thinking outside the box, getting away from this idea that the federal government, the state government needs to provide for all of us. We need to be taking on an individual responsibility, whether that's with our own investments, whether that's an investment of our own health care, and looking at solutions that provide for that and get the government out of our business, frankly.
And please speak as loud as you can. I'll repeat the question. It deals with the constitutionality of national helmet laws. So I'm sure that they heard the question, although the crowd and I did not. So I think we're starting with Mr. Wade.
Well, just so you know, my first vehicle was a little Honda motorcycle, 160, when I was 15. And I didn't have a helmet.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you today, when I do ride a motorcycle, I do wear a helmet. And I didn't know there was a modified motorcycle lobbyist, but that's excellent. Congratulations. I'm not in favor of the big federal central government being involved in it. If we're truly looking at getting back to states' rights and our individual rights and sovereignties, we need to shrink the federal government, get this back to the states where it belongs. And then I've been happy with Arizona for all these years for having that, no helmet law. But I think it should be state by state, truly. That's how I feel. Thank you.
Well, all I can do is reiterate what Doug said. It's a state issue. It's something that the state needs to decide. They want to put it on the ballot, however they want to pass it. It's not for the government, again, in our face, telling us what we are supposed to do. Least of all, the CDC. I don't understand where that comes from. So I think they should mind their own business.
Now, unless there's some disease you're going to tell us about that comes from wearing a helmet, I'm not sure CDC has a role in this either. And no doubt it's a state issue. And as you look at encroachment by the federal government is not out here setting the speed limit, and that's what I would point to. They're not setting the speed limit here in Springerville. They're not setting the speed limit out on the highway. That's a state issue, that's a local issue. And this should be too. This isn't something that should expand in the role of the federal. So I don't know what we're at.
I oppose every motorcycle helmet law in the state of Arizona. I'm certainly not going to let the nanny state in Washington, D.C. dictate to us what you wear, how you drive, all those different things. That's for the state of Arizona to decide. That's for your local community to decide.
We have more questions from the audience. We're going to go one there, and then I'm going to ask one, and then we'll get to Barry.
In all of these sessions, somebody has to ask the top question.
Speak as loud as possible.
So I want to ask the candidates, since it's obvious that the economy is the most important issue in front of us, give me your understanding of macroeconomics and microeconomics.
Question deals with the differences between micro and macroeconomics, how they affect the individual and the horrible economic condition this country is in.
Well, not being an economics professor, it would take something like that to do it in 1 minute. On a large scale, we have residential problems. Everybody knows about the foreclosures that have taken place in all the states. There is probably not a state that hasn't been affected by foreclosures. With the foreclosures, everybody's personal savings has been lost. Everything that we know about why we have a house and what happens after the house, we get ready to sell it, there's a tremendous amount of money. There used to be a tremendous amount of money that was in the house. We don't have that anymore. That's a problem that needs to be addressed, whether it's on a federal level or whether it's on a state level. I'm not sure, but my belief is that if the federal government would recognize, the IRS would recognize that when a bank is losing money on a house and they sell a house for less than what the loan is that's outstanding on it, they write it off. Now, if they can write it off, why can't we?
At a macro level, I think there are two things that we need to do. We need to look at deregulation and lowering taxes. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the industrial world. Japan kindly gave that to us a few months ago, that distinguishment. We need to lower the corporate tax level. We need to provide incentives for businesses to bring jobs from back overseas. We need to give them tax incentives to come back to the U.S., to invest here in our infrastructure, to invest locally, and we need to decrease taxes for small businesses. We need to keep the Bush tax cuts that are in place. We need to extend the Bush tax cut for everybody. And what that's going to do at a micro level is this. It's going to allow jobs to come in. It's going to allow companies to have liquidity. I talk to a lot of small business owners and medium-sized business owners throughout the district. They're sitting on money. They have liquidity. But they're so unsure of what the markets are going to do, what the government is going to do through insurance requirements, through Obamacare, through other regulations that may come down on them through the EPA, that they're not investing. So if we reduce regulations and reduce the tax rates at a micro level, that is going to allow spending to start and for jobs to increase. Thank you.
If you look at the highest level possible, if you look at international trade in our world today, you see the problems that are developing in Europe because of misspending in each of those individual countries. And you see the slow erosion of sovereignty that happened in each of those countries. Britain was smart because they didn't fall into line with the rest of Europe, and they didn't buy into that whole currency nightmare that they've got in that continent. We're seeing that same problem in the United States. We're seeing the same problem of people trying to overregulate and to centralize our economies. The fact of the matter is, we shouldn't have to worry about Washington, D.C., what they're doing to us, but we do, because everything that they do ultimately affects us here in CD1, whether that's the Resolution Mine, whether that's timber here in northern Arizona, regardless of what it is, it's all come down to government basically trying to control Adam Smith's invisible hand of the free market. That's not the way we do business in this country. I believe in capitalism. We need to put a stop to government regulation. Thank you.
Well, I'm not an economist, but I think I can spell the word. But I'll tell you what, I do like Milton Friedman, great economist, kind of a Reagan economist, free market, free enterprise economist, versus who I call Snidely Whiplash, the guy who's the reason why America is in decline financially. That's an economist named John Maynard Keynes. He's the Snidely Whiplash economist that believes in big government, growing debt, grow. Well, guess what? They want to grow the government, grow the debt until we collapse on ourselves, and then America is virtually over. So macroeconomics is when government gets involved to control everything. They control our energy and our utilities and our electricity, and they control our health care now, versus free enterprise. The small businessman who wants to survive and thrive is getting harder and harder and harder for that small businessman to survive.
I've got one that we're going to go with Barry, and I've got another one that we'll go with Terry. We can do that. Decipher this as best I can. You all said you supported state sovereignty. Do you consider sovereign tribes to be co-equal to states? And in particular, do you support the jurisdiction of tribal courts over apparently U.S. Courts and other crimes committed on tribal lands, especially domestic violence? And I think we're starting with Mr. Martin.
No, absolutely. I respect the right of the tribes to control and to run the reservations as they see fit through tribal councils through their government. But what I don't support is the idea that that the local constitution or local tribal constitution usurps our U.S. Constitution. We just had issue with this down on in the Apache Reservation with some of the local elections, where there was a judge, there was some allegations of corruption, there was a suit filed to stop the elections. The attorneys for the tribe said, you know what, we have our own constitution, we don't have to listen. The case went forward, the elections happened, and now there's a suit being filed in another federal court over this issue. And I don't agree with that. I think we have a constitution. We're all Americans. We spent time on the reservation campaigning. I grew up here, just south of Navajo, north of the Apache. People are proud to be Americans. We all should be proud to be Americans, and we all should support and sustain the same Constitution.
I think I understand the nature of the question, because at the end of it, you said something about domestic violence, and I believe that there was a bill that went through Congress that had something to do with domestic violence actions on the individual tribal lands. If it was a non-native or that was being beaten up by a native or something like that, I think that there should be some sort of, there needs to be equality of victims, and you need to be able to enforce that across the board for something like domestic violence. I do think that they certainly have control over their own lands, and I think we should respect that. But we should also respect our state of Arizona and the sovereignty that we have in our state. And we have an arrangement worked out in our state about tribal compacts relating to casino gambling, etc. They do what they do on their land. It passed overwhelmingly by the people in the state. That's the way it works, and I don't see that we're going to change that.
The different tribes call themselves nations. The Diné, the Navajo, they call themselves the Navajo Nation. They are a nation of people. And they were granted these lands by us, we the people, the federal government, so to speak. And I do know this about my Native American friends throughout the state, because I've lived all the way from Cochise County to Maricopa to Yavapai to Coconino, 40 years, all over the state of Arizona. We've got a lot of Native American friends, and especially having worked in construction. That these people in these tribal lands, they want freedom from big government just as much as we do. They want their sovereignty and their rights as much as we do. They want the federal government out of their business. I think they should be able to sort of rule themselves as long as their government, their laws, how they impose their rule of law is right in harmony with our state laws and our federal laws and our constitution.
This may not be exactly what everybody wants to hear, but I've always believed that we need to get rid of Bureau of Indian Affairs. I don't see why in the world we have that in the United States. I know that these are sovereign nations as they want to rule their own lands, and that's perfectly fine. If they pass a constitution, that constitution should be reviewed by the individual states and the individual nations. It shouldn't be that their constitution overrides our constitution. I mean, that's at diametrically opposite ends. And I don't know how much of that comes from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but that's got to be an enormous organization that another one that goes along with the Department of Education. We need to get rid of it.
First of all, gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. I hope I'm speaking up enough that you can hear me. I plan for one of you to be the person who goes on to defeat the Democrat and represent us in Washington, D.C. With that in mind, I ask my Father in heaven to help me keep composed here and not use any foul language at this point. We have a Secretary of State who is dealing with an international treaty at this time to attack our ownership and our ability to carry our firearms. That treaty is about to go before the U.S. Senate once it gets out there, with half of our Republicans being treasonous, tyrannical type people, and may support that and pass that and ratify that particular treaty. My point, my understanding, which I'm asking you to comment on, is that our President and our Senate does not have the ability to ratify a treaty that is in contrast to our Constitution, that is an unlawful act. My question to you is that true in your understanding? And what are you going to do if it happens before you get there or after you get there? Are you going to be the person that stands up and starts making some noise from the U.S. House of Representatives to make sure that these unlawful things do not take place any further?
Based on the applause, I think you all heard that, so we'll just go with Mr. Baker.
Well, as I said earlier, small arms treaty that they're trying to do. It is unconstitutional. We should not observe anything from any treaty that is unconstitutional. For that matter, we should not be, and this ballot measure that's going through our state says that we should not observe any federal law going through the system that's unconstitutional. I don't think that people really understand across this country just how endangered we are as a nation. That we are really losing our rights. We're losing the birthright that our founding fathers gave to us over 200 years ago, that men and women shed blood in this country. And the Second Amendment is one that protects all the other amendments. And we have a responsibility to honor those forefathers that put that down in writing in the Constitution. And we need to make sure that we do not allow some foreign government to have any kind of sovereignty over us. And we should not observe those treaties, and we should not vote for it. And if you do vote for it, I think you're a traitor to this country. Thank
you. The Second Amendment. Quite honestly, we the people, we've got two rights left. The only two things that we have left to protect our rights, our sovereignty, our property, our families, our state, our country are number one, our vote, and number two, our guns. Now, they are trying to take our guns away from us. A treaty like the Lost Treaty, or this treaty they're talking about signing to get the UN power over restricting our gun rights, our ammunition rights, is again another assault on our Constitution. We ought to consider it treason. But this election is the election of our lifetime. If we don't get it right this time, we may roll over into big central government, tied in with the United Nations, the UN, the New World Order, Agenda 21, all of it. This is our last chance, and we better get it right this time.
We need to do what I said before. We need to ratify, we need to re-express, we need to do whatever we need to do to express the fact that this is a constitutional country. We have a document that tells us how to live our life. And taking our guns away is just, I mean, it's ridiculous. And the UN can't tell us what to do. So we need to stand up and we need to say we're going to have gun rights. And if you don't like it, and you're a country that you don't like it, then, you know, you shouldn't be here. It's like Sharia law. If you don't like our laws and you want to adhere to your laws, go back to your own country.
Yeah.
Amen.
I'm pretty sure as your elected congressman, if I went to Washington and supported anything that was detrimental to the Second Amendment, I would face a firing squad when I got back here.
Yeah.
And I think rightfully so. You know, our Second Amendment rights have so much to do with our history, with our culture, with our ability to protect ourselves, and really to me are a symbol of keeping the government out of our personal rights. If our guns go, to me, we're crossing a line that says the federal government is now willing and able to do anything they want to you, and your actions and do anything they want. Now, we saw that a little bit with Obamacare. We saw the federal government try. We saw an overreach there. We've got to continue to fight the fight. We've got to continue to make sure that our Second Amendment rights are protected. And continue to make sure that the UN or any international organization that is making an attempt to infringe on those just doesn't have a place here. But you need to be confident that your elected officials are going to go to Washington and fight that fight. So I think we will. I think we can. We need to continue to fight the battle, and if we do, we'll win.
Okay, I've got a question here from the floor, and then we'll go to Terry, and we'll start this with Mr. Wade. I think perhaps some of this has been answered when they talked about budgets and departments. With the last three big fires, due to Rodeo Jettisky and the Wallow, the list grows, what will you do about the mismanagement of our forests? What are your thoughts about the travel management plan? That's a two-part question. Mismanagement of our forests and the travel management plan. To be specific, not so much how you feel about this subject.
The mismanagement of the forest for decades, and that's what created this catastrophic wildfire scenario. Where we didn't log, we didn't thin, we didn't graze, they cut back everything. They allowed the underbrush to continue to grow and grow and grow. And through years and years of drought, created this scenario where we have these catastrophic wildfires that should have never happened. But we have mismanagement by the Forest Service. And I love the idea of getting our forests back under the control of the state and the local population who know how to manage it better. The travel management plan is horrible, absolutely horrible. And I've seen this for decades, where they want to just close up more and more and more of our forest roads. I was out hiking the other day, first time in 6 months during this campaign. One of my favorite spots, top of the switchbacks, Oak Creek Canyon, where we used to pull off and go camp right there over the rim of Oak Creek Canyon. You can't go there anymore. They've cut off all the roads. You can't take vehicles anymore in there. It's one of my favorite areas to camp, and you can't go there. I think it's an outrage. And again, what happens to multiple use of our forests? Remember? The forests are supposed to be ours, but the Forest Service acts like it's theirs. That needs to be dialed back.
Oddly enough, that's one of the things I took in college, forest management. And, clearing up the brush, clearing up the trees, thinning out the forest.
Well, I'll be back in
And why the Forest Service has let that go, why way back.
here, she hasn't visited here, she hasn't talked to the individuals like we have today. She won't even show up to a debate with the White Mountains Democratic Party, in her own party. We've gone to about 20 million debates all across this district because this is the right thing to do, and I think that it shows exactly what kind of leader she would be if she returned to Congress. Thank you very much.
Terry, and this will start with us again.
Responding to the White Mountain Conservative candidate questions, those 20 questions. Mr. Martin, why didn't you respond? We sent this to 4 occasions, 3 by email and 1 with the initial letter that
A question specific to Mr. Martin about his non-response to the conservatives' question.
You know, as we were looking at the campaign, looking at the prioritization of time, some of you may know that 2 weeks ago I was having to deal with a lawsuit in our campaign, an unjustified, unwarranted lawsuit that came my way, and we dealt with it, and we were focusing resources. So that we were getting back on track with my campaign staff. We made a simple decision that we didn't have the resources necessary. I knew I'd be coming here today. I knew I'd have the opportunity to ask any question that was available for anybody here, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions.
This was sent out in May, before the problems.
It was indeed.
Okay, his reference to the lawsuit does not mention anybody specifically, so we're not going to follow that up at this point. I guess we're going to go with Karen.
I don't know what suit.
I don't either.
Thank you. I want to first say appreciate the organizations for getting this together. It's wonderful. We're getting some outstanding questions. And I've enjoyed listening to it. I think my question falls on different content, but also relevant. My question is, as a new congressman, how are you going to address our deteriorating infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, all of those, the dams and things of that nature that this country, those are public works that are built to improve this country?
The question is about dealing with the deteriorating infrastructure in this country, specifically roads and bridges, and I think we're starting with Mr. Gadd.
I will go to the state of Arizona, Department of Transportation, and I will find out what their priorities are, and find out what kind of funding they require, and I will add that to my state's request.
This is an appropriations question, and we have to look at the issues and the questions and whether it's a state or a federal issue, and we have to prioritize. There's no doubt that our infrastructure needs help. Now, that was part of the promise of the stimulus, if you remember, were all of the shovel-ready jobs that were going to be out there that President Obama promised. I think if there was any consolation to that having passed for all of us who didn't think it should have, it was that maybe we could get something out of it, and we didn't. We got nothing out of it. So it's going to be an issue continuing, and we're going to have to prioritize our appropriations on our roads, on our bridges, on our interstates, and do what we can. But we also have to encourage responsibility at a state level, make sure our state legislators are taking care of the things that they can at a local level, and that's just being fiscally responsible across the board, locally, from a state level, and from a federal level. So that's how I would address it. We can address them, but we're going to have to prioritize.
A couple of facts. In the state of Arizona, the most unsafe area in the entire state on our roads is CD1, rural Arizona. And that means the lion's share of that, for those appropriations, go to more larger cities like Phoenix and Tucson. Here's the thing, and this goes for any appropriation issue that happens. What's killing this country in many ways is rampant spending in Washington, D.C. And the reason why it's killing it in many ways is this whole earmark process that we saw send people like Duke Cunningham to prison. And here's what happened. They tried to get more money for their pet projects and didn't care about the actual transportation needs within the states. For the first time, because they stopped that earmark process, the state of Arizona is actually getting a fair share of that appropriations money for interstate highway system in our own state. That means we need to be fair how we do it. And it is in the Commerce Clause. It does regulate commerce between states. It is a legitimate expense between states having an interstate highway system. I would support that. Thank you.
The question was a great question about infrastructure projects, yes. My wife and I drove here, and the road coming here was terrible through St. John's and getting here. Just bouncing all over the place, things are rattling all over. So yes, this country needs a lot of work, but quite frankly, we don't have the money. The country is broke. If we keep borrowing and printing more money, it's not going to solve our problem. It's going to make it worse, and it's going to accelerate us towards our ultimate doom, which is financial collapse. What we really need is people with the courage to step up and get government to slow down that spending, get to a balanced budget amendment of the Constitution, and then open up for the private sector to move and restore this country again. Energy is the answer. If we could get government out of the way, we got all the energy we need. We could have trillions of new economy based on our own energy. Then we'd have the tax revenue to really rebuild our roads and bridges and handle our infrastructure without printing more money to do it.
Okay, gentlemen, I have to take you to task for something that you responded to the motorcycle gentleman. You said that whether the decision to wear helmets was a state issue, not a federal. Actually, gentlemen, it is an individual choice. When you have a law that does not affect anyone else, like the seatbelt law, let's take that for example, or the speed limit. The speed limit, I understand. Speed limits can be dangerous to others. Seatbelt law is not dangerous to anybody else but myself. Whether I wear a helmet or not is not dangerous to anybody else but myself. When we have so many rules and regulations that tell us what we can and can't do, including coming soon to a store near you, what you can and cannot buy and put in your own body for food, why would you advocate that individual rights such as what you decide to eat and what you put on your body is a state issue?
This starts with Mr. Martin.
I think as we look at some things that are safety concerns for the general public, can make sense, like a seatbelt law, I would support those things. But that's a state issue. That's not a federal issue. We'll continue to propose or to support that as a state issue and not a federal issue. I don't think that we should, we need to be looking at ways to get the federal government out of our business. We need to be supporting the right of individuals, our civil liberties, but at the same time, there are safety concerns that we need to consider. I'm telling you, it's not a federal issue. I would push it on the state side, but if the state didn't take it up, that's not anything I'd put concerned either.
And that's why I voted against it.
I came to Arizona 39 years ago, and part of the reason I came here from Indiana, which is where I was born and raised, is I love the open space, and I love the freedom, and I love the beauty of this state. It's spectacular. But more than anything, I love the freedom here. You used to be free to roam about, free to go through the forest where you want, free to camp where you want, free to ride a motorcycle without a helmet if you want. And I love the freedom. I'm just one of those rugged individuals, that loves freedom. I don't want big government, more government in my life deciding everything for me. But what we really need in America is to get back to a new era of personal responsibility. Not all of America dependent on government for everything. This is the fight that we're in. It's the battle that we're in right now in this election. When I say we got to get it right this time, we got to get out and encourage 2, 3, 4, 5 other people that haven't voted in a long time to come out and vote conservatively for fiscal conservatives who like liberty and freedom. Thank you.
Very good, Mr. Ray. Very good. Personally, when I refer to something as a state issue, you are the state. I would say that you would be telling us what you wanted and what you didn't want. And it would go to the state legislature, and they would be the one that would take it up. I don't, personally, I don't like to wear a helmet. I think it's cumbersome, and like Doug said, you lose your freedom. So if it were up to me, and I was in the state legislature, I would also vote against it.
He's very close to your mouth the way Ms. Warning did.
When I started this campaign, one of the things that concerned me was the quote that I was hearing often. And it goes back to what my forefathers fought for. They fought at Ticonderoga, Concord, Gettysburg, Appomattox, First World War, Second World War, Korean War. They fought for a simple principle that started the revolution: taxation without representation. And as I got this crazy notion to run for county treasurer, I started looking at finances. And I found that daily idiom had been changed. In these two counties, Apache and Navajo, we have an issue that goes much further than our counties. And that is representation without taxation. My understanding of taxation is any individual or corporation should be taxed. Now, from my heritage of 5 lines of Native American blood, including Pocahontas, I have a love for the Native American people. And in my county, the youth of the county are the ones that are being hurt the most because of representation without taxation.
Right.
I thought that was an issue to Apache and Navajo County. But gentlemen, you are facing it as you go to Washington. Our nation has half of the nation having representation with no taxation. If 10% is good enough for my God, 10% for my nation, and 10% for my state, I would be saving a lot of money on my tax bill. And I expect that that's all I should have to pay. So would you please, when you get to Washington, make sure everybody's got a vested interest in our nation. That 50% that's paying nothing needs to have a vested interest in what we're doing. And what are you going to do about making sure everybody has a vested interest financially in this nation?
Thank you.
One of the biggest dangers that's this nation is facing is the fact that we're getting to the point where there's going to be more people who take tax revenue than actually pay tax revenue. And you know, when we reach that point, we're Greece at that point.
We're worse than Greece. Greece and Spain and Portugal are all less than $20,000 per person in debt. We are $44,000 per person in debt.
Can we restart the clock on this?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
My point is that when we get to a point where we have more people taking tax revenue than paying tax revenue, we're going to be ruined as a nation. That is the road to serfdom. That's the road to socialism. That's not the way we were raised. That's not what we believe in as a nation. We need to have, everybody has a stake in this country, and everybody should be sharing in the benefits of this country. And that's what I hope. Thank you.
When I said earlier that I haven't always been a Republican, I'm kind of a new hybrid Republican, if you will. Because I could have run as an independent, but you don't stand much of a chance running as an independent. I like the Republican Party, I like the principles and the values of the Republican Party, and they're more in line with mine. But you know what I said to some young folks over here earlier is that even my Republicans in my own party aren't courageous enough. They're being too weak. They need to be stronger. One of the strong things that they're not doing is addressing this taxation of our federal government. The IRS is outrageous. 89,000 pages of tax code, manipulated by 14,000 lobbyists in Washington, D.C. What we truly need is bold tax reform and some congressmen and senators with the courage to initiate it. I'm in favor of the fair tax.
Yeah.
Which would be fair for everybody. And then everybody would have skin in the game.
Well, took mine away. A flat tax would be just exactly what we need. A flat tax would get rid of the IRS and all the IRS agents and the 89,000 page book that they have. There are IRS agents. My brother worked for the Treasury Department. He was an IRS agent. Specifically, only one particular topic. So all those agents only deal with one particular topic. So you're not going to deal with one IRS agent with everything, just if you're involved in one particular topic. That's ridiculous. They don't know what's in that 89,000 page book. A flat tax will take care of everything, and you don't need the IRS.
We most definitely support a flatter, broader, more simplified tax structure. Flatter so that we don't have the peaks and valleys that you see in it right now, where some people are paying, some people aren't. Some people are taxed at this rate, some down here. It needs to be broader. We need to look at getting rid of loopholes. When I say broader, closing out the loopholes. So corporations and individuals are paying what they should be paying, are supporting the country where they should be supporting it, and it needs to be more simplified. I mean, we have a tax structure at code that's just untenable. It's not sustainable. The average person is spending money just to do their taxes. I pay money to have my taxes done because it's too complicated. I don't know where to go with it. So I pay a professional. There's no reason why individually we should be able to do our taxes at our home. It should be very clear, very straightforward, and very simple as to what we owe. And we should be willing to participate in our government and our system and alleviate the need for the IRS, and especially the way that they do business, particularly with how they're going to do business with what the Supreme Court has decided on Obamacare. So that's what I would do for taxes.
In lieu of a budget, Congress has done resolutions. And right now, it's still circulating in Congress that the bill has to go pay on that. We don't pass the budget, we don't take the pay.
Question was would they co-sponsor a bill that would deny pay to a congressman who did not pass a budget? As you know, there hasn't been a budget passed in several years.
That's the Senate's fault, not the House.
Congress, which is the House of Representatives, has passed several budgets. The Senate refuses to.
Right.
All right, that's Harry Reid. He needs to go.
Yeah.
We got a president without the courage to step up and say, "Come on, Senate, pass a budget." No courage there. No leadership.
No courage.
Yes, I would sign that pledge. No budget, no pay. I would even take it a step further. And I would challenge all three of my opponents here at this table to sign a pledge right here today, tonight, if all of us would sign it, that if we become congressmen, we don't get congressional retirement. We get the same retirement as everybody else. Social Security, Medicare, and our own IRAs. How about that?
Yeah.
I'd like to find out if any of my three opponents here have the courage to sign that pledge with me here tonight. But we need term limits as well.
Yes.
I will advocate for a balanced budget amendment, term limits for congressmen and senators, change the pay, change the benefit package. We have too many politicians stepping up for one retirement, then another retirement, then another retirement. Have you ever heard what a double dipper or a triple dipper is? Okay, we got too much of that in our political arena.
You know, on a local level, on a state level, term limitations works really well, but term limitations for Congress does involve you would have to have an amendment change. You would have to, it's in the Constitution, there's nothing that says how many years you run, there's nothing that says how many terms you serve, but I agree. I have absolutely no problem in passing anything that says, look, you guys can't pass a budget. We have it in the Constitution. Again, let's go back to the Constitution. Constitution says that there will be a budget every year, and the country can't operate without a budget. So why is it that we've gone this far without a budget? 3 years without a budget. All under Obama. Which my answer is.
Yesterday, I would support no budget, no pay. There's no doubt that, I mean, that's what we send our elected representatives to Washington to do. They're supposed to be fiscally responsible. They're supposed to run the government. It's constitutionally mandated that appropriations come from the House. That's what your elected U.S. Congressman should do. And to Doug's question, I would be happy to, I'm on the trail. What about all those congressional benefits? And I can honestly say I don't know. I don't know what they are. If it includes a retirement after a certain piece. I'm working in my own company, or have been until I started to run for my own retirement. So to say that there's a retirement out there, we would remove that from the table. I don't have any issues with that. To say, our elected officials should not have any more privilege than the common citizen across the board, whether that's through pay, whether that's through benefits, anything else. There's no reason that the governors should be having more benefits than the governor. But I hope that answers your question.
I'll take that one step further. Why don't we tonight say that we'll sponsor a constitutional amendment that will do something extremely important, which is the 28th Amendment that would say Congress will pass no law that it does not live under itself. That's what we need. All these different things, all fold into that one thing. That's the central problem. The central problem we have with members of Congress is that they are constantly extending benefits to themselves. They're constantly finding ways around it. They cannot be allowed to continue to try to pass laws that they do not expect to abide by. And that's what I support 100%. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I want to know your 1 minute plan on how you are going to fund and secure the border of Arizona with Mexico. And I want it done in 2 years, or else you'll fire them.
The question should have been how they will fund and secure the border of the United States, since we're running for the United States Congress here. So I think she would agree to that amendment of her question. And we're starting with Mr. Gannon.
Funding, I would take and use that as a national security issue. I would get the money from the National Security Fund. I would use military along with the Border Patrol, and that can be done within 6 months. They can be deployed. Our border is a national security area. It needs to be defended. It's in the Constitution again. We keep going back to the Constitution. We should be supporting the Constitution. We should be enlightening the Constitution. And we need to defend the border with military service if that's necessary, whether it's National Guard or whether it's our Army. That can be done in short order.
Well, there used to be patrols by the United States
I would support appropriations for a double layer fence to be completed and finished from the coast all the way through, to southern Texas. Make sure that our border, that we have a double layer fence, that we have a fence that is a start to keep out from there. We need to look at regulations and getting rid of regulations that keep our border patrol from being able to patrol on National Park area. I think of Oregon National Park down there that keeps them from being able to do their job. And that doesn't have anything to do with more money and more appropriations. That's a regulatory question. Now, I would provide the Border Patrol all the appropriations that they need to do their job. From there, if we needed the support of the U.S. military, I have no problem putting the military on the border. And also putting that option. I think that is a backup option for military attack. We have higher divorce rates, we have higher suicide rates, and we have teams for the military. So I think we can do it. We can secure our borders quickly
but not the solution long term.
I completely disagree. There's something that we need to do tomorrow. There's one person in this country that has not let us down. There's one person in this country that's never let us down whatsoever, and that's the American soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine. We need the National Guard on the border today. We could do it tomorrow. We could make sure it happened, and that would secure the border for the immediate term. The second thing is we made a commitment as a country that we would fund a double-layer fence. We need to do it. But the third thing is there need to be consequences for coming into our country illegally. I'm the only one in this race that will call it what it is. If you give someone a pathway to citizenship for entering this country illegally, whether they pay a fine or whatever, that is called amnesty. And I don't believe in that, and that encourages people to come into our country illegally in the first place. And I have the courage to say that here today. Thank you.
Securing the border, our federal government, it's their duty.